Hi, my name is Kim Bland, and I am a current student at Southeastern University. Today, I am going to be talking about a qualitative approach presentation called Case Study. What we will be discussing today is the definition of case study, the features and characteristics, why case studies are valuable, the methods that are used in case study, and also some of the challenges surrounding case study research. In definition, a qualitative approach in which the investigator explores a real-life case or cases over a certain amount of time. During that time, the investigator will research detailed, comprehensive data utilizing several sources. In addition, in the case study, it focuses on one person, one group, one organization, one event. The case study is a full study that investigates a unique individual, event, place, or opportunity. It will be compared to one or several other cases, or it can be a standalone case that researches a question of interest. Some of the features and characteristics of a case study are that a case study can be a concrete entity or less concrete level. If it is concrete, it is researching an individual, small group, an organization, or maybe even a partnership. If it is less concrete, then it is researching a community, relationship, decision, process, or specific project. Furthermore, in an article called The 5 Misunderstandings About Case Study Research, the article defines a case study as a detailed examination of a single example of a class or phenomenon. A case study can provide reliable information about a broader class. It can be used in preliminary states of investigation to generate a hypothesis. Furthermore, in a case study, there are specific features. A case study is a study of a current real-life case that's actually in progress, so it's time sensitive. You can use an intrinsic case, which is a specific issue, problem, or concern. An example of this would be burnout. Or an instrumental case, which is actually understanding the problem of the example of burnout. It is defined with certain parameters. It has a specific location, a specific time frame, and it is a hallmark of good quality study. Basically, that is an in-depth understanding of the case, and then in that, you use multiple sources. Furthermore, in the features, the case study uses a specific approach to analyzing the data. Multiple units could be used. An example of this would be a school, or entire cases could be used. That would be an example of a school district. It identifies case themes. The case themes basically will become uncovered through the research, and a person can organize the themes chronologically. They can be analyzed across cases, looking for similarities in or differences, and or a theoretical model can be used. The case study ends with conclusions, explaining an overall meaning, patterns that have come up, or even explanations of the research. An example of some themes that could emerge is found in an article by Parker, and her article is an intrinsic case study of 2 homeschooled undergraduates' decisions to become and remain music education majors. The 3 examples of the 3 themes that emerged from this article was remembered moments, parents, teachers, and other important role models, personal qualities, and overcoming obstacles. So why is a case study valuable, or maybe when would it be suitable to use? A case study basically involves several individuals, a program, an event, or an activity. It is also a case that shows different perspectives on a problem, process, or event. So ordinary, accessible, or unusual. This approach is used when the researcher has a clear and identifiable case with boundaries and wants to provide an in-depth understanding of a case or several cases. Furthermore, when you're taking a look at case selection, in an article again called The 5 Misunderstandings About Case Study Research, the article talks about random selection, which helps to avoid biases. And sample size is used for decisive generalization. The random sample archives a representation of a sample that allows for generalization of an entire population. The stratified sample generalizes for specifically selected subgroups within a population. Information-oriented selection is maximizing the information from small samples to single cases. Cases are selected based on expectations about their information content. There's extreme cases. This can be used for getting the point across in a dramatic way. Maximum variation cases, which is used for obtaining information about the significance of various circumstances for case process and outcomes. Critical cases is having strategic importance concerning a general problem. And the paradigmatic cases is to develop a metaphor or establish a school for the domain that the case concerns. Furthermore, case studies are valuable or familiar to these certain areas: social scientists, psychologists, medicine, law, specifically case law, political science, which uses case reports. Furthermore, in the article 5 Misunderstandings About Case Study Research, it shows its value because humans who do research go basically from novice learners to expert learners. And that is really the whole point, according to this article, is ultimately becoming an avid learner and learning as you research. It examines real life practical experiences. It allows constructivism, which is understanding in which the world in which people live and work. Each person perceives, feels, and experiences the world around them very differently. Real life realities and feedback come from those who are studied. Case studies also create a path towards scientific innovation. And then also, it's just a matter of finding the black swan. And this is an instance where everybody has always thought swans are white. The only way to see the black swan is by observation. And again, utilizing case study is utilizing the observation. That is really how that black swan can emerge. The case study is great for generating and testing hypotheses, but it's not limited to this. And then a narrative can be the answer. Furthermore, in a case study, the methods that are used are direct observations, participant observations, interviews, audiovisual materials, documents, reports, archived records. These are just an example of a few. And in the article by Parker, the methods that were used specifically in her article was that it was an intrinsic case study to understand particular circumstances in a decision-making process. Her design was holistic because the data was analyzed together. It's bound by individuals. So there was verbal discussions, there was also journal writing, and then personal observation and field notes that were used. There was a small sample size that was used. Only 2 people were utilized in this research. It was utilized in a 12-month period. And the data that was collected was interview questions, which took about 50 minutes. They were audio recorded, and there were also transcripts connected to that. There were 23 journal entries submitted electronically, and then each individual was observed 4 times. So that brings us to what are some of the challenges that can happen in a case study? It is said that case studies can draw inaccessible conclusions. A person needs to understand, is the research narrow in scope or broad in scope? Broad would be like an example of a real estate organization. More narrow would be making a decision specifically to what real estate team to join. Also, a challenge that a person needs to be aware of is understanding bounded systems to study. So whether there's going to be several candidates and who that is that might be possible in the study or the right person in the study, and then what cases are actually worthy of the study that people want to learn about. Furthermore, there could be research limitations, which could be time and financial, maybe even understanding the events in the process. Case selections can be a challenge. The question is how many cases? A lot of times, typically, it's between 4 to 5 cases that will be researched. Also, with cross analysis, what guides that cross analysis? Is it instrumental or intrinsic purposes? Again, we discussed that earlier. Identifying the object or the phenomenon up front as well can be a challenge. Furthermore, in the article, 5 Misunderstandings About Case Study Research, it's discussed that it also goes off of, or the research goes off of a lot of times intuition, which could be a challenge. Also, there's biases towards the verification that can happen, which could ultimately become false. And however, as we identify this, a lot of times the research starts off as maybe a bias, but can turn into a new conclusion by the end of it. So it could be a challenge, and yet it's something that could turn into a new conclusion, which is pretty interesting with those case studies. Finally, in the article by Parker, one challenge could be ethical issues, and those were addressed in this article. And basically, what was going on is that the researcher served as the researcher and professor, and also served as an elementary teacher to the subjects that were being researched. All in all, case study is a very interesting approach to research. And I love from the article 5 Misunderstandings About Case Study Research, the way that this quote states why case study to me is important. The goal is not to make the case study be all things to all people. The goal is to allow the study to be different things to different people. What an excellent way of looking at why a person would want to do case studies. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions, you can contact me at kbland1@seu.edu. And if not, all of my information came from these references this evening. And I want to wish you a great evening. And again, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.